Okay, welcome to Module 2, the yellow zone. Here's a disclaimer. And here's the overview of what we'll cover in the yellow zone Module 2. Lesson 1 is rain, how to break the stress cycle without sitting down to meditate. Lesson number 2 is the OODA loop, how to combat stress in any environment with little or no time to spare. Lesson 3 is tapping, how to talk about your stress without getting stressed. Lesson number 4 is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, how to ground your senses when you're stuck in your head. Lesson number 5 is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the Mel Robbins version, which is how to use a starting ritual to catapult you into action. And then lesson number 6, the battery technique, which is how to look at your thoughts and recognize the state of your mind. So before we get started, make sure that you have your notebook and your favorite pen. Turn your cell phone on to silent or vibrate. And if you need support, let me know. And by the way, notebook and favorite pen would be your course book and guidebook. So here's what you'll learn. Lesson 1 is how to recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture, which is the acronym of RAIN. Lesson 2 is the OODA loop, to organize your thoughts, which is another acronym for observe, orient, decide, and act. Lesson 3, get emotionally free with tapping, also known as the emotional freedom technique. Lesson 4, grounding yourself in your senses. 5 is that countdown to action. 6, change your mind by seeing the positive and the negative. Okay, so here's lesson 1, rain. Okay, when I first heard of rain, I could not stomach it. The way it was delivered was just in a way I couldn't listen. It seemed really like syrupy and sweet and just, full of love and compassion, and I just couldn't listen. And it was really just the messenger. And once I was able to look past that and see the message and understand that concept, I began to realize just how powerful a concept rain actually is. So simply put, rain awakens mindfulness and compassion, applies them to the places where we are stuck, and untangles emotional suffering. This is a quote by Tara Brach, who has a PhD in psychology, who's an author and teacher in mindfulness, and is that syrupy sweet teacher I told you about. Okay, in lesson 1, rain, we're going to go through what is RAIN, which as I said is an acronym, and it gives you a framework to rest your thoughts. Why does it work? Basically, you're going to be responding, not reacting. I'm going to give you some real life examples, and then we'll go through a practice run through. So what is RAIN? Again, so when I wrote this book, you may notice in the workbook, I originally thought of it as a bonus. I didn't think of it as a kind of yellow zone or orange zone or red zone, because it's almost closer to green zone, which is why I now have it at the top of the list. But then over time, I realized how it actually can be used in that yellow zone when you're feeling stressed out. So this is Tara Brach. She actually took RAIN from Michelle McDonald, who is another meditation teacher. So Tara Brach took this concept and wrote a book about it called Radical Compassion, which if this lesson resonates with you, I definitely guarantee you read this book, which I have right here. There it is, complete with my notes. Okay, so bottom line up front when it comes to RAIN. Number 1, it's an acronym. So what you're gonna do when you have a stressful moment is you're gonna, number 1, recognize what's going on, zero in on that emotional or physical trigger that we talked about in Discover Your Zone, and bring that to mind. This kicks off the action sequence and the beginning of the stress technique of RAIN. So basically some strong thought made you recognize, recognize that you're about to react, and just kind of think of for a second like, oh my gosh, I was about to just go to war. So the next step is to allow that recognition to just happen, and allow what's happening and see it in your mind. The thought, the feeling, whatever it is, allow it to just be there and be aware of it. No judgment, just watch it like a passing cloud. Then the I of RAIN is investigate. Investigates how it's affecting your mind and how it's affecting you physically. Why did you feel that strong emotion? Is there some thought behind it, some story you're telling yourself? Where are you feeling it in your body? Is it in your throat closes up, or is your stomach dropping? So the thing about the I in investigate is that usually it's the most time-consuming step, and it requires the most courage and the most honesty. You have to be very honest with yourself in this investigation for it to work. So understanding the emotion and knowing how it physically feels can help get your rational brain back online when you're kind of going more into that limbic. If you can name the emotion, go ahead and name it. And sometimes it can be really tough for you, which is why if it's too tough, you just focus on that felt sense of what's going on. Your brain's not in it, so you think of the body. And so what that does is it gives you like that interoceptive journey. So it uses that vagus branch of the nerve, and you kind of are more cognizant of it. So once you've kind of figured out the investigation part of it and looked at it further with that space in mind, then nurture it. So send a message to like, what is this need right now? Go beyond the step from I feel to, I feel angry, I feel sad, but then the next step is to try to get a sense of what does that feeling need? What does it need to hear? What kind of message can I send to this in a nurturing way? If it's hard for you to imagine what to say, imagine someone else saying it to you. Maybe a good friend, maybe a parent, maybe a mentor, or even a higher power. If none of those are working for you, think of your future self, or maybe the self you hope to become, that inner part of you that maybe is the nicest part of you. What would it say to yourself? So sometimes what it needs to hear is just, it's okay, you're fine, we can do this. Something like that, just like a gentle message to that part that needs to hear it. Keep trying those phrases until you feel a shift so you can respond to that trigger, respond, not react. And then if you can't find the words, try going with another emotion, just a felt sense of it, and just trying to send a calming feeling to that area that might feel tight or burning or tingling, whatever it is that you're feeling. Another one is just to imagine someone holding you. So going like this and just feeling like more open and vulnerable to that. But again, none of it with judgment. This is all happening in your own mind. You don't have to tell anybody what's going on. This is only for you, and it's happening in the space of your own head. Okay, so why does it work? It helps you retrain those neural pathways of your thought process, those kind of ruts in your mind that you just automatically go to, but now we're gonna have to retrain that. So what it allows you to do is to develop the space between the thought that you have and the action. Right now, you're probably in a space where you just go straight from one to the next. You've really laid down that neural pathway over and over again. And what can happen with that, though, is that you go from being lost in this unconscious hamster wheel of the thoughts just spinning and spinning with all the reactivity that goes with that. And what this does is it gives you the ability to stop that and awaken to this present moment. You can respond with that rational neocortex part of your brain and not so much with that emotional limbic side of your brain. So imagine maybe the last time you lashed out, maybe the last time you just reacted or that you lost it somehow. You were probably more of that primal or limbic brain and in a little bit of that fight or flight instead of the parasympathetic rest and digest. You're probably not using that neocortex, right? So you might have so if you could think back to it, you might have recognized some body cues, and had you recognized at the time, you'd know what stress zone you were in. So remember, there is that space between a thought and an action. And the critical thing here is to develop that space, to grow that space for that neocortex to step in with rational thought. Recognize and allow. So here's an example where I guided a mother and a daughter through rain without even recognizing that I did it until I was kind of halfway through it. So often rain is done on your own, but in this case, it was kind of a partner rain, if not a three-way rain, because I was guiding the mom primarily through it, and the daughter was speaking up now and then. So what happened in the emergency room was they were having a dispute, and the mother brought her in, and both of them were at the end of their rope. And the mom was saying, like, I want to be mindful. And so I asked her, well, what are you doing? And she's like, just trying to be mindful. And didn't really have a framework. So this is why I started with rain. Let's see, I'll just fast forward through the whole encounter. At one point, the daughter said something to the effect of, Mom, I can't talk to you. If I tell you something, it seems like everybody knows. And at that point, Mom got really defensive and was like, well, that's because no. And so that's where I was like, whoa, hey. So you could see the emotion. Like I was able to obviously, from as an outsider, witness the emotion suddenly rising up. And I said, wait a minute, what just happened there? Did you notice what she said, and did you notice how you reacted? take a listen to what she said. She was trying to tell you, Mom, if I tell you something, and so I just rephrased it for her. So I recognized it for her, and then I helped her allow by giving it that more neutral picture of it. She just said that she can't trust you because the whole house knows when she tells you something. That gave her some clarity on being able to step back from it for a minute. She kind of took a moment, took a second, and that first realization, I think she then kind of worked back and she recognized it. Then she recognized what I was saying with a more neutral tone, and then so she was in allow. And then here's the amazing thing. She actually accepted that. She looked back on her daughter and said, do you really think I'd do that? And she had moved on into investigate all by herself. And then that is when everything just really opened up, and they were able to investigate the whole problem together, as the mom had recognized her own judgmental blaming, well, that's because, et cetera, et cetera. This was now a neutral place, and she was much less reactive to it, and she was now responding. So the daughter then kind of starts to break down, and mom goes into nurturing mode just as a mother would, just as her basic self. So she'd been trying, and she could never do it until I walked her through this framework. And let's just say that everything turned out good as far as I know. In the emergency room, they walked out very happy, and they definitely seemed to connect and bond quite a bit more after going through this practice. Here's an example of how I do this at home. My personal struggle is with anger, so I found that is my emotional trigger cue. For example, the first few times I did this, I really had to slow it down and recognize. I found that a big one was when I'd come home and see dirty plates everywhere. And that was my trigger. What I would do then is be like, oh my gosh, dirty plates again in the sink. Like, really, or outside the sink, can I even put them in the sink? Or can you not even put them in the dishwasher? And, if I hadn't recognized, I would just like go to my own old neural pathways of like, no, and then this, and that's dirty too. And like, oh my gosh, like everything's dirty when I get home from work. But instead, one of the first times that I did it and recognized how powerful this technique is that I gave that space of like, okay, no. Just accept, like, okay, I'm angry. This is a trigger. I am angry about this yet again. I feel like I've said so many things. No. Allow. This is like a passing cloud. Take a couple breaths. Like, okay, no. These are just dishes. Take a higher perspective here. What's going on? Try to be detached. And then I recognized that. I gave it a space. And then I started to investigate, like, okay, well, maybe it's just because I just got home from work. Maybe it's because I'm really tired. Then I started to kind of look around, and I was able to broaden my perspective of like, wait a minute, I'm guilty here too. There's a giant pile of mail on the counter also that I haven't opened. And I'm just as much to blame for the mess here as anybody else in my family. So what I did then was went to nurture. And with that, I kind of send a thought of like, the whole family is just trying to help out. The whole family is just doing their thing. It's not one against the other. We're just here, and we're here to help each other out. And then I was able to get over it and move on and not lose it about something as simple as the dishes. It took just like a minute, and that was as I was brand new to it. Another one that I would recommend at home, maybe you can use it with finances when you recognize that stress you're looking at of how to make ends meet. Maybe you're budgeting, maybe you're angry about this, you're angry about that, and you're getting frustrated. Recognize those stress cues, recognize the worry, allow a space for it, investigate where it's coming from, but then give it a nurturing thought of like, this is okay, we'll figure it out. Or maybe just worrying doesn't serve me. Worrying gives me nothing but more worry and more anxiety, and it doesn't get me anywhere good. Another place you can take it is with meal planning. That's another personal one of mine, is I hate meal planning. I procrastinate, and I don't want to do it because my kids don't eat, and that's not easy. So meal planning is just rough. And what I've found is that it helps to have the perspective of this does not serve me, and to nurture that with, I'm just going to do the best I can to nurture my family's health. And I'm just doing the best I can as another nurturing thought that I keep setting myself even when my kids are not eating their food, which is something that I'm sure everyone can relate to who has kids. And then exercise motivation. This comes and goes. I'm sure I'm not alone on like some days I feel amazing and some days it's not. So recognizing that maybe those days that I don't want to go, I beat myself up if I skip a workout and I start like self-shaming and and those insecurities of like, oh, I'm not going to be good enough and I'm going to fall behind. And then that self-doubt of like, can I even do this? Am I going to injure myself? Am I going to hurt myself? Or am I being lazy? Just all these thoughts kind of creep in. So what I do to nurture when I'm trying to do exercise motivation is that my future self, the one that's a year from now looking back, who's saying, good job, Leslie. You're going to lace up your shoes and you're going to go. You're going to go for a run. And that's kind of helped me get through a couple runs. I was like, that's right. My future self, the one who is happy that the one 2 hours from now, that girl is going to be super happy that this girl right here did the workout. And I've never regretted a workout. So just kind of maybe think of yourself 2 hours from now. That could be the person giving you the pep talk. Okay, so let's run through the drill of rain. I'm going to kind of go through it a little bit slower now so that you can take a little bit at ease, and I'm going to just kind of do it in a more calm tone if I can. Okay. All right. So first, let's take a few deep breaths. Breathe in. Breathe out. Let's do another one. Breathe in. Breathe out. Try and get into a calmer state of mind. Clear your thoughts. Try to think of a recent episode in the past week or two where you experienced a really strong emotion, or maybe where you felt stuck, or something just seemed really difficult. Okay, so think back to that situation. Imagine everything just as it was. Play it out in your head like it was a movie, and imagine how you might recognize in that moment, recognize those swirling thoughts, the intense emotion you experienced. What did that emotion feel like? Were there some body cues that might have triggered you to that strong emotion? If you can name the emotion, give it a name. And now we're just going to allow that experience to be. It's just there. Give it some space. See it as it is. No judgment here. No criticism. Just let it be. If you feel yourself starting to judge or self-criticize, tell yourself something like, this belongs. What is. Just notice this truth of what you're feeling and allow it. Try to put some distance between what you're feeling and get a higher perspective on it, and grow that space of pressing pause on that emotion and that body trigger, and just see the moment clearly. The next step is investigate. So with as much courage and honesty as you can, what about this moment makes it so difficult? What is that emotional cue? What is your body telling you? Investigate, where is this coming from? Why? Why is this triggering you right now? What's the story you're telling yourself about this situation? There's some kind of suffering happening. Maybe it's worry about failure, worry about being alone or isolated. Maybe you're feeling angry. Maybe it's guilt or shame. Open up to that deeper space below the feeling and be vulnerable to it. See what's there. Look at these thoughts and analyze them. Investigate what beliefs you're holding on to. And not only thoughts, but how it feels. How does it feel as you uncover deeper and deeper into the layers of that reaction? Do a quick scan of your body, head to toe. Where do you feel it? What's it doing? What are you realizing about your body cues? The N is for nurture. Look at that space you created and what you now see. What does that space you just found, that message, what does it need? How can you nurture this thing you've uncovered? How can you respond to what it needs? What can you offer this emotion that you're now able to see with more clarity? Maybe it just needs to hear, "You're okay. You're okay. It'll be all right." Send it the most caring and kind compassion that you have to that space. Offer some thoughts inwards to your suffering so your suffering can be heard. That may be all it needs. It just needs to be heard. Listen to it. If it's hard to find the words, just listen. If it needs something more, if it needs to be some message needs to be sent, what would someone you love tell you? What would your higher power or someone who has loved you, what would they say to you, to that space? And as you rest in nurturing, try to feel that message as it spreads through your felt sense. Is it a warmth? Do you feel a lightness? Keep sending the words or emotion to that area that brings you that greater sense of ease. Now we move on to after rain. Now just reflect back and look at that shift in your mind from where you started and rest in this. Take another pause here. Be present in this moment and rest in this space that your mind and body has grown from through the practice of rain. Be aware of the process you've gone through and how the quality of your mind state has turned inwards. And that space between reacting and responding has grown just that much. You are not your thoughts. You can recognize that you are not your behavior. And there is a lot more truth to that moment that you can awaken to if you look at it. Okay, so to summarize, RAIN is an acronym for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. Why does it work? It allows you to get clear on your thoughts and your emotions. I gave you a couple examples, and we did a practice run on it. So be sure to go to the workbook after this and complete the worksheet pages, either now or after the next happiness bonus, which is to do this again for 20 minutes. Easy, right? So if you do this for longer, about 20 minutes, 10 minutes is good too. It counts as meditation. And so plan out a time either later today or tomorrow, repeat the practice, but set that timer. So this will give you more time to investigate deeper and deeper and develop that space, to grow that space with even more clarity and even more skill. But again, you don't have to sit and do this in meditation. You can do it when you're looking at the dishes. You can do it when you're sitting in a messy room. You can do this even in the midst of an argument, if you just take that minute to recognize whatever it is you're feeling during an argument or a miscommunication. Okay, so that's it for the lesson on rain. Take care. Download the course materials at stressreleasesurvivalguide.com.